Around 600 BCE, on the shores of Egypt's Red Sea coast, a remarkable event took place. Pharaoh Necho II, ruler of Egypt's 26th dynasty, launched a mission that defied imagination: to see whether ships could sail south from Egypt, continue west, and return by completing a full maritime loop around the African continent. Nearly 2,000 years before the Age of Discovery, this idea was both revolutionary and audacious. To carry out this bold plan, Necho turned to the most skilled mariners of the ancient world, the Phoenicians. With generations of experience navigating the Mediterranean and known for their robust ships, the Phoenicians were a natural choice. Necho lacked a strong native navy, but understood the power of seaborne exploration. His kingdom had recently regained independence from Assyrian domination and was eager to assert influence across trade routes and distant coasts. The goal was simple, yet radical: determine whether Africa was surrounded by ocean or attached to other landmasses. According to Herodotus, who chronicled the story over a century later, the sailors set out from Egypt's Red Sea coast and headed steadily southward, hugging the shoreline to avoid open sea dangers. Each year, they docked, disembarked, and planted grain to feed themselves before resuming their voyage. It took nearly 3 years. Eventually, the expedition passed through what is now the Strait of Gibraltar and returned to Egypt via the Mediterranean. Their most astonishing claim: that at one point during their journey, the sun appeared to be in the northern sky. Herodotus, unfamiliar with the southern hemisphere, found this too strange to believe. Today, however, we know that south of the equator, the midday sun does indeed appear in the north. This single detail, dismissed in antiquity, is now one of the strongest arguments that the journey actually happened. It's not something that could have been imagined by someone unfamiliar with equatorial astronomy. Though no Egyptian inscriptions or records of the voyage remain, modern historians continue to debate its plausibility. Necho's ambition is evident in his other grand project: a canal linking the Nile to the Red Sea, a concept far ahead of its time. While the canal was never completed, it reflects Necho's vision of Egypt as a naval power. Centuries later, the Romans still believed Africa's southern oceans were blocked by land, suggesting that if the Phoenicians succeeded, the knowledge was either lost or ignored. Some scholars argue that such an ambitious expedition would not have been funded without significant strategic or economic motive. Others point out that curiosity, combined with the lure of untapped wealth and maritime dominance, may have been enough. To test the feasibility of this voyage, modern explorer Philip Beale led a reconstruction between 2008 and 2010 using a replica Phoenician vessel. Sailing along the suspected ancient route, his team completed the journey in about 2 years, without planting crops or wintering ashore. The experiment proved that such a voyage was possible with 6th century BCE shipbuilding and navigation. If Necho's expedition truly happened, it would be one of the greatest achievements in the history of ancient seafaring. And even if it didn't complete the full circumnavigation, the observed solar position strongly suggests the sailors reached at least the southern tip of Africa, an extraordinary feat in its own right. Into the unknown. Roughly a century later, in the 5th century BCE, another epic voyage took place, this time under the flag of Carthage, the western successor of Phoenician maritime tradition. Admiral Hanno, the navigator, was chosen to lead an expedition beyond the Mediterranean, through the Pillars of Hercules, now Gibraltar, and down the west coast of Africa. Hanno's journey is recorded in a brief but remarkable text known as the Periplus of Hanno, preserved in a Greek translation. It describes the foundation of new colonies, encounters with unknown peoples, and rare wildlife, some of which had never been documented by Mediterranean civilizations before. Carthage had grown into a major naval power, controlling key trade routes across the western Mediterranean. Yet its merchants sought more: gold, exotic resources, and unclaimed territories. By expanding southward, Carthage hoped to bypass trans-Saharan trade intermediaries and access Africa's riches directly by sea. The fleet Hanno commanded was enormous, up to 60 ships, possibly carrying thousands of settlers and soldiers. Though the figure of 30,000 colonists seems exaggerated, the core fleet likely comprised a few thousand. Most colonists were dropped at early settlements in North Africa, while Hanno and a smaller crew continued into uncharted waters. He established outposts along the Moroccan coast, built temples, and described fertile lands filled with wild animals. At a river called Lixos, likely the Dra, he encountered a local tribe, the Lixids, and recruited interpreters to guide the fleet further south. Eventually, the expedition reached Kern, a colony believed to be in modern Mauritania. The name likely meant final post or outer station, indicating the frontier of the known world. But Hanno kept going. His team sailed past rivers with crocodiles and hippos, likely the Senegal or Gambia. They saw fires glowing on the mainland at night and heard strange, rhythmic sounds, flutes, drums, voices that left them unsettled. The log doesn't explain what happened, but fear drove them onward. The climax of the voyage was a terrifying natural sight. A great fiery mountain near the coast, spewing smoke and lava. Hanno called it the chariot of the gods. This description matches Mount Cameroon, one of the few active volcanoes on Africa's Atlantic coast. If accurate, the fleet had reached Central Africa, over 2,500 miles from Carthage. The final chapter of the journey describes an island where the crew encountered hairy, aggressive beings. The males escaped, but 3 smaller females were captured, killed, and skinned. These creatures were labeled gorillas in Greek, the earliest recorded mention of what we now believe to be gorillas or perhaps chimpanzees. Though the return voyage isn't described, ancient ships would have struggled to sail back against Atlantic winds. The fleet likely relied on rowing and coastal navigation to reach northern outposts and eventually home. Today, historians generally agree that the journey happened. While embellished in places, the periplus matches real geography and wildlife. Hanno's log remains one of antiquity's most astonishing records of exploration. The Lost African Expedition. By the 1st century CE, the Roman Empire had extended its reach across much of the known world. But its understanding of Inner Africa was still minimal. Around 50 CE, a Roman officer named Septimius Flaccus led a desert expedition with an objective beyond retaliation. It turned into one of the deepest incursions into sub-Saharan Africa ever attempted by Rome. Rome's African provinces relied heavily on trade with the interior. Goods like gold, ivory, and exotic animals came north via trans-Saharan caravans. Yet the desert frontier was volatile. The Garamantes, a powerful Berber group in the Fezzan, modern Libya, controlled key oasis towns and sometimes supported raids into Roman territory. Flaccus was dispatched to respond to such raids, most likely from Leptis Magna, a key Roman port. His force included Roman troops and local auxiliaries familiar with desert terrain. Camels, caravans, and water supplies were crucial. Their route likely followed known oases like Cadames, pushing deeper past Garamantian territory. Rather than stopping after punishing the raiders, Flaccus pressed south. According to Claudius Ptolemy, the expedition crossed the Tibesti Mountains, a rugged volcanic range in today's northern Chad, and reached a lush land with a large lake filled with hippos and rhinos. This was almost certainly Lake Chad, then much larger than it is today. Roman soldiers, hardened by desert marches, would have been stunned by the fertile, animal-rich landscape. Ptolemy refers to the region as Aegisimba, a mysterious name that appears only in Roman geographic records. What happened at the lake remains unclear. The Romans may have traded, rested, or simply observed. The lack of battle reports suggests a peaceful encounter. Afterward, the expedition returned north, retracing its route through the desert. Flaccus didn't receive a triumph in Rome, and his expedition faded into obscurity. But Roman coins from the 1st and 2nd centuries have been found in the Lake Chad Basin, offering tangible hints of Roman contact with the region. Though Ptolemy's account is brief and secondhand, it remains one of the most compelling records of Roman exploration into the heart of Africa. Flaccus and his men crossed deserts, mountains, and unknown territory to stand on the shores of a vast inland sea, a journey nearly unmatched in Roman history.